Welcome into the LCRR podcast, episode 1, season 1. Joey Zanaboni here with a very special guest to start us off. It's the one and only John Boog Sciambi from ESPN. He's also been the commentator for the Miami Marlins back when they were the Florida Marlins.
That's right.
As the Atlanta Braves. John, you're in New York City.
I'm number one. I'm the first.
This is the first. You're the first guest, first episode, first minute.
I love it. All right.
Big honor for you. Well, we hope not.
Yeah.
You're in New York City, John. Everything okay for you up there? Let's start there.
Yeah, it's been weird. I was born in Philadelphia. I grew up here. I'm a city kid, and I actually was out doing spring. I was in Florida for a bit. I did some spring training in Arizona, and it was, the week of March 10th or so, and I had a choice to stay out there or to come back home, and this is home. And it's been drastic, but it's been scary at times and anxiety producing at times. There's no question. One of my parents is in the city, and another is in New Jersey, and so just making sure that they're okay by this really. And it's been different. The way I compare it the most is, if you've ever been in New York City when there's been like a really serious snowstorm, like a crazy blizzard, there's a calm and a quiet that comes, and the vehicular traffic slows and the noise goes away. It's kind of like a blizzard without the snow is what the atmosphere is like. So few people, so few cars on the street.
Well, and such a difficult time for everybody. And what's made it so difficult is we're all kind of alone together, but sort of isolated and alone. And part of the reason I wanted to have you on as the first guest was there was a tweet that you sent out about 3 or 4 days ago where you said, I've been on every pod and or radio station in existence. Obviously, you hadn't been on this one yet. But you said, my act is so tired, Uncle on Boog. Now, you also said, DM me or tweet me if you want to have me on your podcast. So I did. But it sounds like
day's clear. I said my day's clear. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so it sounds like you've been doing some pretty serious self-reflection. And maybe at this point in the season, usually you're plunged into doing multiple games a week. Have you been kind of diving into the psyche that is John Sciambi?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I have a therapist. We're FaceTiming. Man. Look, you can sit there and stay connected in this regard, but I think I'm pretty self-aware. So there's nothing about this that has struck me or caught me off guard about it. But I would say, I realize that I like the real personal interaction. So I miss doing my job for sure. But when I do Wednesday Night Baseball, I miss seeing, Jeff Dufline, my producer, Jimmy Platt, the director, Andre, my camera guys, Amy, Bruce, Greg Logan, all those guys that, and the connection. And on radio, being there with singing and, and Justin Ware, our producer, and on TV, my, stat guy, Ivan, you miss the interaction, not to mention, your partners on the air. I mentioned Singy, but Sutton, this year we're going to work with Chipper, and then the players and the coaches too, you get used to that connection, the energy that you get off of that. So, I think this only goes so far, and you need that type of interpersonal connection, no doubt.
And so what's the difference between Boog Sciambi and John Sciambi?
It's funny. We were just talking off the air about your career, and I just turned 50. I think I'm better than I was 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't know that if you would ask me when I was your age, by the time I was in my mid-40s, would I think I've gotten better. But where I think where I think I've improved is in the answer to that question, and it is not much.
Hmm.
It's not very much, and that's what everybody should be striving for. As I like to say, that the gap between
Mm,
who you are on the air and who you are off the air, you're trying to do this with it because once you bring you, your I think we all want to be Scully.
right.
I think we all want to write verbal poetry and have that thesaurus like vocabulary, but most of us realize that we can't, we don't, and then you just got to figure out what's you. So
Well,
ultimately, the stuff that makes people laugh or makes me laugh off
yeah.
the air is most of the stuff that I'll do on the air. So I would say I feel confident in saying, yeah, there's not a ton different.
Right. Well, in my own career, I just had a sort of a breakthrough year. I felt like in 2019. I'm sure you don't really know that much about myself, but I've had a few videos go viral, doing a lot of sort of one-liners and zingers. I'm known for making kind of crazy metaphors and similes. And just a little bit earlier this week, one of the highlight reels was picked up by CBS Sports, and it's seen as kind of like a unique thing and a funny thing. And it's a lot of fun. I'm a fun-loving guy, and I'm somebody who just loves sort of the humorous nature of words. I was a poetry major, and I just love to sort of sculpt little stanzas and little verses, couplets of often absurdist kind of humor. But I struggle with it because I think that as I've gotten just a little bit of traction kind of online with, I think, especially like younger people, college kids, now I almost wonder, am I just playing sort of a character and kind of just trying to
Right.
conform to their expectations a little bit? And it's not that I don't enjoy doing it, but what kind of advice can you give? Because you are a funny guy. I really enjoy listening to you because you actually make me laugh. And, it does make the game a lot more enjoyable. But what kind of advice could you give about um, finding a way to keep it real during the broadcast as well as find the humor?
Yeah. I mean, look, my sensibilities. I think it starts with this. You have to trust your own judgment. So,
Hmm.
what is the play-by-play guy? You know, you're the ombudsman. You're really making the content decisions. I mean, whether you're working with one guy, two guys, or no guys, and a producer, really it's on the play-by-play guy. Where is this going? I mean, other people can steer it at times, but you have the steering wheel. And I trust my judgment in terms of finding what's interesting. So most games I'm trying, going in, I'm going to try to figure out, um, and I trust my judgment on finding stuff that's interesting, trying to keep it smart, and then I want to have fun. I want to play. There's
Hmm.
got to be a sense of play. I was going through clips, and I sent I sent two clips to David Ross. I mean, these no one has anything to do, so I was showing. I'm like, "Do you miss
Yeah.
this?" But it was,
Ha.
there was just one funny clip of a game that we had worked last year with Tim Kirkjian, where Timmy, starts with a story about going in spring training to the Braves clubhouse, and he's going to the door, and he says, and a nice security guard says, "Don't worry about that. You don't have to pull it out. I've been reading and watching you for years. I love
Yeah.
your work.
Yeah, I
Welcome in,
remember that.
Peter." And
Ha.
and then Rossi says, "Well, I was walking down the hall tonight, and as I'm just walking away, a guy yells at me, 'Good luck tonight, Mr. Lester.'"
Yeah.
And uh,
Well, similar looking men.
right. And then I finished with a story that was related to me probably 5 minutes after it happened, but it was game one of the World Series it was 2018. Game one going into Fenway Park, and a guy outside of Fenway, Shulman's going in to call the game on the radio, and a guy's like, Mr. Sciambi, will you
Yeah.
sign?" Shulman's like, "Wait, who do you think I am?"
Ha.
He's like, Boog Sciambi? And Dan looks at him and goes, I'm Dan Schulman. And the guy goes, I always get you guys confused.
Well, if you shaved your head, I think you would kind of look like Dan Schulman. You have kind of a similar facial structure. So
I'm
now
gonna tell him you said that. No, so anyway,
I do.
I sent the clip. I sent the clip to to Rossi, and then we were just and Rossi's tag on that was, ooh, that's I'm sorry for Dan, and I was like, hey, I'm right here. I'm right here. We just,
Well,
whatever.
put a little bit like that, and you look like Dan Schulman. Just
Um,
Paul right there.
something. Well, who do you get? You got to get I'm
Here we
like
go.
John Cusack's buddy, Ari Gold from that's
Jeremy Piven.
Yeah, you get
Yes,
that?
I have got Jeremy Piven. I've gotten Jeremy Piven, Stanley Tucci. The biggest one is Paul Rudd. People say I talk like Paul Rudd, but I feel like that's more like in like social is like, hey, kind
Okay.
of out at the bar or out at a restaurant or something.
Paul Rudd's Kansas City, St. Louis-ish guy, right?
Good man, Paul Rudd. Yeah, so I'm in St. Louis for all of
Yeah.
our with anybody who has their location settings turned off. I am in St. Louis, Missouri, and I kind of we have that sort of Missouri setting, I guess.
Yeah, you have Jeremy Piven, like Grosse Point Blank Jeremy Piven, like back. Yeah.
You're a little bit before my time here.
Don't do it. It's too early in the interview. I'm your first guest. Come on.
Ari Gold. I have to ask here in terms of just again kind of situation we're going through.
Yeah.
Kind of opening up on my end. I've been doing this since 2014, and I've done a lot of games, probably about 150 or so a year, and just have kind of geared my life toward it. And now it's the first time in probably about 6 years where I've really had to kind of stop, and there's just not another live game kind of opportunity. And I've been dealing with kind of these feelings of despair and a little bit of depression and just kind of like a little bit of feeling of uselessness. I do other stuff. I do some substitute teaching and I do some, but with the schools closed down, it's tough to get that as well. And I don't know. I don't know if maybe you have a pulse on the broadcast industry, but do you feel like that's something that other broadcasters, people in sports media are feeling right now?
I mean, we're all sort of searching to find, places. I've been trying to do stuff weekly with Chipper Jones, and we're doing a thing tonight on the Hall of Fame Instagram page, just because it's got a bunch of followers. But I think everybody's struggling with it. I will say that for me, I've told people that this week's been hard for me, and it's been a weird contrast. I think. Look, in New York, we're in the epicenter, and it's scary, or it has been scary, and it's serious. And I think that it's kept me in this today type of mindset. And I feel like the last few days, I've struggled more than at any point. And the reason is it feels like we're turning a corner. And I want us to turn the corner. But with us turning the corner, it then makes me start to think about, okay, so we're turning the corner, and when are we going to get back to work? And floating around back here is pretty clearly, not for a while.
Yeah.
So you start to, it starts to play with, holy shit, how long am I going to be doing this for?
Yeah. Yeah. Trapped.
And so for the most part, again, to restate, for about a month, I've been in the, all right, let's just do today, and we'll get through today, and it'll be fine. And then as it starts to, feel at least a tiny bit more hopeful, then you start to think broad picture, and then it's, oh my gosh, this is going to be a while. So it's been. I mean, every day hasn't been perfect for sure, but I've been telling people the last couple of days haven't been great. Have not been great. So
it's been hard. It really has been. There have been some sort of rumors or potential kind of plans for Major League
Right.
Baseball to play in Arizona, and I think people
Yeah.
are kind of acquainted with that idea of playing at the spring training facilities without fans. Would you have any idea what the broadcast element of that might look like? They've talked about
No,
miking up players, but have they said anything about what you would do or play-by-play guys like
no.
you would? Yeah.
And the thing about it, you gotta look. I don't know. No, I don't, and I don't think they do either. But you got
Mhm.
to remember. I guess the thing when I really think about it is this: I feel pretty confident, and again, I'm here, so it resonates more. And even this is called like I don't think we're going to be watching sports with fans in the stands for a while. Like if you
Right.
told me it wasn't going to be for a year, I wouldn't be like, no way.
Sure.
I think there's a chance we will not see fans in the stands for a year. Okay. But regardless, I think we all agree that it's going to be a while and that there's a pretty good chance we're going to start stuff up without fans in the stands. And so they're not just playing the games for competition's sake. You're playing the games for TV and for radio.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm not sure what they're going to do, but we're going to be the ones in there transmitting what is it like and so forth. So, they're playing these games for TV,
Have you
for
ever
radio.
done a game? Have you ever done a game without anybody in the stands where you have no crowd noise or anything like that?
I mean, I did the Marlins for 8
Hey,
years.
hey, hey, boom, baby.
Drive safe, everybody.
This has been
Uh,
John Chavi.
I I was doing a Marlins game in like 99,
Uh-huh.
2000, and it was like the 14th inning. They're playing the Expos,
Yeah.
and there's less than 1,000 people, and
Mhm.
that old place hold 65,000
Yeah.
people,
Cavernous.
and it's the 12th or something like that, and whatever, foul ball back, and it's 2-2, and then all of a sudden you just hear a guy just go, "Let's go Yankees!"
Yeah.
Just like he was sitting next to me.
Yeah.
So I haven't, I didn't do that Orioles White Sox game of a couple years ago, but
Yeah.
I know what it's like to have almost no one there. And by the way, not that this is a reason not to stop, but I've had more than one player and manager say to me, "Man, that'll kind of stink and it'll be weird. Like for a
Mhm.
week, it'll be fun because you're back to work. But 3 weeks into the season and there's no one in there. I mean, anybody that's going to spring training and you go to a B game on a backfield, what that's like,
Yeah.
where Mike Trout hits leadoff seven
Right.
straight times,
Well, I've
that's
done I've
boring.
done a lot of games without anybody in the stands. It is not quite as fun. There is a novelty to it. I've
Yeah.
done junior college and high school and some lower level college stuff where people just aren't out there, and it's a tough deal. Do you think it's feasible? I guess from the standpoint of, I know that with that plan they've talked about having players sit 6 feet apart. So
Yeah.
I guess one of the real hard things would be they wouldn't even be able to high five or to do anything like that. Do you think that's even possible?
I don't know. I mean, we can't sit here and pick apart a plan that they don't actually
Right.
have. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Because all those things that came out, I'm sure they wish had not come out because they don't have
Mhm.
answers to all the questions.
Yeah.
As I like to point out, my biggest concern is for the people on the margins that have to participate in this, who are most vulnerable, who are being paid the least. What are the answers? So, meaning, okay, the teams are quarantined, they're in a hotel. The people that clean the hotel rooms, are they
Drive the
quarantined?
buses. Right.
Are driving? Are we really we're gonna pay them $10 an hour and make them stay away from their family for 5 months? Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
doesn't. And then how do we keep it safe? And then not to mention the fact, if you can't start a pro sports league without wide scale testing, and you
Mhm.
can't give a pro sports league wide scale testing unless everybody outside my window right now can get a test, right?
Right.
I mean, or
Right.
Detroit or New Orleans or St. Louis, or everybody's got to be able to get their hands on a test. You can't have, the Diamondbacks backup second baseman able to get a test and the average person in St. Louis or wherever not able to get a test. That's no good.
Right. Well, to as you said, pick apart details that are for a plan that probably doesn't actually exist or isn't fine tuned yet. Obviously, that's all in the range of hypothetical. But I guess kind of pivoting to baseball in general, there's been a lot of talk about shortening the games and just
Yeah,
talking about the realm of possibility. I think in the last 5 years, the length of the game has grown by about 10 minutes, despite some nascent efforts to try to shorten it. And
yeah.
this year was supposed to be that opportunity to put in the rule about pitchers having to face three guys when they come in out of the bullpen.
Not going to do anything.
Not going to do anything. Do you
No.
think it's possible to shorten the game outside of just cutting down the number of innings that the
So
game?
it's not. It's to me. It's not. It's in combination. This is the point that I make. It's these three things. It's length with pace.
Mhm.
So the problem is three things are happening. It's not just that the games are getting longer, it's that the time between pitches is getting longer and the game's getting longer and the amount of time between action is getting longer. You can't have all three of those things happening. If the games were 2.5 hours cut off or 7 innings cut off, I would say 2.5 hours, and there was this little action, okay, but you can't have it be an hour longer and this little action. In a perfect world, you'd like it to be shorter, quicker, and more action. Like all of those things, I think, for the future of the sport is best. There's a great Grant Brisbee article from, I don't know, probably 4 years ago, where he compared games from 30 years apart. The biggest thing is that they just take longer to pitch now,
Yeah.
man. So it's not just how long we're there. It's last year I did a Yankee Blue Jays game, and it was 15 minutes from first pitch in real time until the first ball was in play.
Hmm.
You can't have it.
Right.
And I love it. And
Right.
you can't have it. So I think that those three things together, you got to work on all of them. It's just got to feel like you got to give me a little bit more. And if you're not interested in altering that, then you can't keep me there forever.
If you could do one thing to make the game more entertaining and maybe appeal to the younger folks, the younger demographics, what do you think that would be?
Well, I think so. I'm not. I will not allow the question. It can't be one thing. If you really
Sure.
want to make it appealing, then I would say, look, I'm not a purist in any. Nothing's off the table in my mind. So if you really want to
Mhm.
make it appealing, like I went to a Ranger game fairly recently, hockey game. I'm pointing
Mhm.
downtown. That's the direction of Madison Square Garden. Um,
Absolutely, I knew that.
and of course, so I had this weird thing. I was talking with someone about that the other day. I was saying, I was talking about someplace, and I started going over there, and I was like, yeah, that's where it is, out that way.
Right.
So in order to appeal to kids, though, it's apples to oranges. Don't misunderstand, but it's like the home run derby. I mean,
Yeah.
the home run derby was a torture session when it was 10 outs, and it's just take,
Yeah.
take. But then they put a clock on it, and it's, you want to swing or not? What do you got? So, yeah, so that's kind of the thing about it has to move,
Mhm.
and I think there's only so much time. So I think that my theory would be, if you put in a hyper pitch clock, if you put
Mm.
in a pitch clock that was like 15 seconds, I think that would certainly move it along. If you put a cutoff point, I'm not saying absolutely it has to be these things, but
Right.
if you put in a hyper pitch clock, I think that would lead to more contact and the ball
Right.
being in play, because these guys are awesome. These
Yeah.
The players today are whatever. They're not just swinging out of their asses trying to, like it. There's
Yeah.
there's thought process behind all of it. So They've got to tweak some stuff, and you got to have the players on board.
Well,
With
there's a quote from Catch 22 by Joseph Heller that I often think of, which is the game had gotten so bad that it was good, or maybe it had gotten so good that it was bad. And I think
right.
that with scouting and with the charting that they do, the ability
There's
of
no question.
players to foul off pitches to
Yeah,
stay alive,
yeah.
it
I,
just
I
it
think there's
lengthen
something
yeah.
to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's something there. So there's part of it is the information. Yeah, the reason that guys take so long, one is there's more max effort stuff, but the other thing is informationally, they think they have some of the answers to the test. So they're not down to just say, well, my slider is good. I'm gonna throw a slider here.
Yeah.
They're going through, okay, but this guy slugs X on sliders. Maybe I shouldn't throw him. So that decision making process takes it longer, and I do think that there's something of what you're talking about that's factored in. But it is fascinating, like talking about how fast we've gotten here with all these adjustments. Um, it's really interesting, and the way the two seam fastball has disappeared because that plane of the way that pitch moves relative to a slightly uppercut type swing,
Mhm.
that pitch gets slaughtered now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting stuff.
Well, I just name checked Catch 22 here, and a little shout out to a novel. You're a product of Jesuit education, which
Yes, I
I am
am.
as well.
There you go.
And I guess I was kind of fascinated. I know we could go on and on about changes to the game and shortening the game, all that for a long time, but I was really curious. Was there ever, when you were a kid, a piece of fiction, poetry, something that wasn't really sports related, that made you want to be an announcer? Was there something that just the words really spoke to you?
Um, I don't know that I would say that there was anything specific to a piece, but in high school, my freshman year, I had a speech class, and the guy that ran a speech class, his name is Dr. John Tricamo, and just retired 2 years ago at Regis. But he was my English teacher, I think, the next 3 years. But he made me, maybe made was strong, but Regis has a really strong speech and debate program. And along the line, guys like Jim Shudo was my high school classmate. He's on CNN now.
Right.
Pablo Torre is another guy who's a speech and debate guy at Regis. So, but he made me do it because he just thought that I would be good at it. And I only did it one year. I did it as a sophomore, but he was the one that kind of grabbed me and said, "This is you have a skill set here that matches up with this. You should be doing this." So I would say that there isn't a piece of literature or writing, but Dr. Tricamo is is always in my head as far as um, just his influence on me. And yeah, he was teaching grammar, which I am terrible with, but
Oh, you're doing
yeah.
fine, John.
What's that?
You're doing absolutely fine here.
Um, but he was a big influence, and I would say that someone that sort of ushered me in the right direction. But he was a big influence, and I would say that someone that sort of ushered me in the right direction.
Well, I was the city debate champ here in St. Louis in 2009, so we have that
There
in
you
in
go.
common. I had kind of a similar experience. A teacher pulled me aside and said, "Why don't you do this?" And that kind of helped me to understand a little bit more about words. And some years later, I get into announcing. When you got into announcing, I think one of your big breaks was through Dave O'Brien. Maybe you had given him a tape, and I think I read something that you said. I gave him the tape, and he looked at me, he listened to it, and looked at me and said, "Boy, I thought that was going to be terrible," and it
Yeah,
wasn't. And so,
right.
is that a true story? I guess what did you give him, and how did that kind of propel your career forward?
I was doing updates and talk radio down in Miami, and
Uh,
Obi was one of the two radio voices along with Joe Angel. And I started going to Marlins games, doing games in with tape recorder.
mhm.
So I put together enough of a tape that I started to hand it out, and I gave it to him. And then one day when I was at the ballpark, he said, "Hey, I listened to the tape. You want to sit down and we'll talk about it?" And when we went to go sit down, he held up the tape and he said, "I thought this was really going to stink, and it didn't." And that was
Yeah.
his. And he helped me a lot. And actually, I ended up with that tape getting a job doing short season A with the Boise Hawks, and
Oh, yeah.
it was through a guy who I'm buddies with now, Jim Frivola, who works out in Las Vegas for their hockey team. But our
Yeah.
mutual friend was Dan Levitar.
Mm.
So Dan got me connected with him. I ended up getting the job in Boise. And then when I came back at the end of 96, the Marlins were redoing their broadcast format. And I was lucky enough to just kind of, glom onto that.
Well, you got any crazy stories from short season A? That is what I do as well with the Johnson City Cardinals. Anything ever stand out that you still kind of can't shake or don't want to shake?
Plenty of stuff. The manager was Casey Kochman's dad, Tom Kochman. He
Yeah.
taught me a ton. I still, uh, the Astros bench coach, I guess, last 2 years was Joe Espada. He was the
Mm.
Southern Oregon shortstop, and I always joke with him about that. There's plenty of guys. Mark DeRosa was in Eugene, so I see D-Row all the time. And just that, I mean, that's where I learned how to do it. My partner was Rob Simpson. He was great. I wasn't very good, but I saw a part of the country I knew nothing about, the
Right.
Northwest, I knew nothing about, and it was gorgeous and amazing. And yeah, you still, like I got a Twitter DM last year from Matt Curtis, who was on the team, and he was an assistant coach at USC. Now he's at Loyola Marymount, I think. But yeah, I mean, all that sticks with you. It's all part of. It's all part of. I think your experience, and Koch taught me a lot though about. He had such a great scouting background. He's
Mm.
scouted guys. Um, I mean, tons of Troy Percival and Eduardo Perez, Howie Kendrick. So he's impressive, Koch's, and so I learned a ton, and I loved it. I loved being in Boise. It was great.
You ever wish you could go back to that time in your career when it was maybe a little bit simpler?
I don't know about that because I like just the I love what I'm doing now. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know about if you could just put me there for a little bit, sure, but I I mean, I'm glad I did it. I don't think I yearn to still be doing it.
Yeah. It's tough, but it's intimate. I
No
often
doubt.
tell the story when I was in independent baseball, 2016. It was the first year I worked for a team called the Texas Air Hogs of the American
Right.
Association. And we had a preseason game, and it was just us broadcasting the game and internet radio, no video. And there was a guy named Derek Callahan who pitched for the Yankees organization for a couple of years and lefty out of Gonzaga, and he was supposed to go 2 innings. And with 2 strikes and 2 outs in the second inning, this guy slammed a line drive up the middle and hit him right above the eye. And the pitch was in the low 90s, so I think it was 100 some odd mile per hour coming off the bat, and he just went down. I mean, he just fell to the turf and just blacked out. And before the game, our little program had shown me how many people were listening, which was 46. But I remember that there was a way that fans could make a username to show that they were listening. One of them was named P. Callahan.
Oh
And when
boy.
he got hit in the face, you know, there were multiple people on the field who said, yeah, as soon as that hit him, we thought he was dead. I'll say it sounded the same coming off the bat as it did hitting
Hit
his
him in
face. Yeah, we didn't really have anybody in the stands talking about stories where nobody was in the stands. It was just a preseason game, and the weight of it just it hit me in that moment, and I just tried to do what I could. I had only been doing it for a couple years, and just said what I saw. And I'll never forget after about 20 minutes of, the trainers and other people kind of gathered around him, he got on his feet and was able to walk off. And I exhaled and
Yeah.
I just said, it's going to be okay. And I wasn't talking to, a listener base. I was just talking to whoever was listening in the Seattle area where he was from. I just say it's going to be okay. And what I was really saying was, your son's not going to die tonight, and you're not going to find out about it on a
Yeah.
little internet radio app. And about 2.5 months later, we were, 25 miles from the division race. We were 34 and 65 that year, and we were on a bus trip to Joplin, Missouri from the Dallas area. And we drove up there, and he was on the bus, and it was just this, he's going to pitch tonight. He's going to pitch tonight. And I did this game interview with him. We talked about how he was able to come back, and multiple plates put in his head, and, surgeries. And I broke down,
Yeah.
after the interview. And part of the reason was he said, that night that I got hit, my mom really appreciated the announcing. And he came out of the bullpen that night and put down 10 in a row and probably
Oh
had
wow.
4 or 5 strikeouts. Oh, John, I cried,
Yeah.
man. I
Oh, I can feel.
cried.
Yeah.
I
Totally.
cried like I've rarely cried in my life. And to me, I've done some pretty cool stuff, some college national championship stuff, and some, affiliated minor league baseball and stuff like that. But to me, I've
Right.
never seen anything more courageous than a guy come back after that,
Yeah.
when we weren't making a playoff push. We weren't going to win the championship or anything like that. He just came back, for his own determination. And I guess from my perspective, my own kind of, selfish perspective or whatever, as a broadcaster, it just, I thought, 99.9% of the time in this business, it's not going to be as serious as that. But on that night, there wasn't any other way for that family to find out what was happening. And oh, it's always stuck with me. And I don't know. I guess that got a list of things here I was going to ask you about, but I was going to talk about, kind of making that transition from minor league to major league, and what's that like. But I guess that there's the nuts and bolts, and I'm sure you have, a lot of people kind of ask you, how did you do it, and how did you go from Boise to Florida, and from Florida and Atlanta to the MLB. But do you ever think that, um, sometimes maybe, I don't know, has it changed for you? Is it still everything that you wanted it to be, as you found more success? I know that's a long way to get to kind of a strange question, but can you kind of see where I'm going with that?
Yeah. Um, I mean, look, I needed reps. I wasn't that good, and it took me a while to get
Mhm.
to a place where I felt, confident that I was just going to nail the descriptive nuts and bolts. And yeah, I needed the reps. And then the same thing when I went to Atlanta to go do the games on TV.
Yeah.
That was that was helpful. Yeah, it's been a process. I haven't however others look at me, I have not experienced it as that it was easy right from the start. Not that I was fighting it, but it's changed along the way. I would say, and now I feel, way more settled in,
Yeah.
with how I do it, and
Do
the
you still
way.
get nervous before a broadcast? Still get
No,
nervous?
I get excited,
Yeah.
like not nervous. Um, I'm excited to do it. I'm
Yeah.
excited to, I said, I, but there's a confidence to it. I don't, because I don't feel an uncertainty. I feel comfortable um, that we're going to do something really good,
Yeah.
and that's exciting. It's a good feeling. Um, it's and it, but it, and then some nights you don't, and because it's live and you can't predict the way things are going to go, whether it's radio or TV. But I love it, and I enjoy it as much now as I did when I was 7 years old. So I mean, I love it. I love doing it. I love doing baseball. I like doing basketball too, but
Right.
baseball is, where, yeah, it's where I grew up. Both sides of my family, mom's side, dad's side, love baseball, and I really enjoy it. So, I mean, it depends. Like you said about getting nervous, like it's not flat in any. Like I'm excited. It's exciting once it starts. There's no question.
How often do you go back and listen to your own games?
Um, Here and there, the one piece of advice that I got that I liked when I would do it more frequently though was, and this is hard because you're trying to get better and there's an immediacy to it, but I do really believe in this idea that if you want to give yourself the best chance to evaluate yourself, that you probably should wait 2 weeks
Mm,
before you listen back to something so that you're listening to it at least a little more the way a listener would, as
yeah.
opposed to, okay, here's the part where I think I said, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and,
You
and
forget some of the details and come
right,
into it
but
with
that,
fresh ears.
yeah, but that you're coming at it a little bit differently. But I, for the most part, I feel like I get out of there and I know when it wasn't that good and I know when it was good.
And do you ever get frustrated with a broadcast like, "Boy, I just didn't have it tonight"?
Absolutely.
And how do you get through? What's the salve that you put on that wound?
I get to do it again real soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, every once in a while, your timing's crappy. Yeah, absolutely, that happens for me. I'll also say, in the same way about listening back, it's never as bad as you think it is, and it's
Yeah.
probably not as good as you think it is
Yeah.
either. If you
Right.
when you listen back to it, but yeah, there are times when I certainly experience it as just can't get my timing quite down. Maybe that's more on a radio side, and on TV, just make some bad choices here or there. Um, yeah, for sure. I still get that every now and again.
What's the greatest game you've ever called, or do you kind of rank it in your head? Do you have something that stands out?
Man, it's such a funny thing, right? I like uh I got to call Halliday's no hitter in the playoffs
Yeah,
in 2010.
that was amazing.
There's only been two of them, and yeah, I was happy with the job I did. My voice cracked a little bit in the final call, but I was happy with that. And I mean, on a resume, that would be one. When
Right.
Alex Gonzalez hit the extra inning homer in Game 4 against the Yankees of the '03 World Series, uh, like that's another moment. Um, Yeah, another, as in terms of a moment, was Game 2 of the 2013 LCS when Ortiz hit the homer where Torrey Hunter flipped over the
Mhm.
ball.
Mhm.
Was one of those. Just the place was electric, and it was so dead, and then was crazy. It was uh, it was pretty wild, but I don't have them ranked in my head.
Yeah.
They all
Well,
sort
you've
of,
got a group. You've got a group of games that you
yeah.
kinda say, "I" what was the game that you felt like, "All right, now I've made it. I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, and now I'm here."
There's some sirens.
The cops are coming for you if you can't answer this
No,
question.
like unfortunately, it's funny that
Oh, no,
It's
it's probably the ambulances, right?
different.
Yeah.
I'm close to a hospital,
Right.
and so the thing that's changed in terms of the ambient noise, or I think of it as ambient noise, is now whenever there's a siren, the last month it's stopped me
Yeah.
from taking someone to the hospital.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, that's a good question. I think I've made it. I would say calling my first All Star game in 2010.
Mhm.
And I recognize that in today's world it's not as big a deal, but for me as a kid, I can remember being away at like baseball camp and listening to like Harwell or Scully call it, and that I was, there are two people calling it. In terms of in the U.S., it's Joe Buck's on TV and I'm on radio.
Sure.
I would say that in 2010 it was Anaheim. I was calling the game with Dave Campbell. I The All Star game always, and I know that for a lot of people, I still think the baseball All Star game still has some oomph to it, ratings or whatever aside. I still think it's still a cool thing, and it's the only sporting event going on, and if you're in the radio, you're listening to me, and if you're on TV, you're listening to Joe. So the All Star game always kind of underlines to me, yeah, what I get to do is pretty cool.
Well, before I let you go, John, I read a quote about sort of the future of broadcasting from you. And I think you said something like, we can't broadcast games. It's not possible to broadcast games as they've been done in the past. And I was wondering if maybe you could just expand a little bit on that. I've kind of on social media branded myself as a broadcaster who aims his work at millennials. I think
Right.
that young kids are looking for uh, something occasionally with more of an absurdist bent. And that's just been my kind of observation and sort of the way that I've oriented some of my work. But for yourself personally, what do you see as the future of baseball announcing? I know we talk a lot about like miking up players, but maybe
Yeah.
strictly in terms of the play-by-play, in terms of the guys in the booth and the ladies in the booth.
Yeah. Um, I I don't know what I see the future as. I'm just guided by my own sensibility. One of the things I have a strong opinion on is there's something about baseball with the amount of space. The things that we were talking about earlier, you're asking about the game, like those are intertwined with the broadcast. There's more space to fill now.
Yeah.
There's more dead time. Um, and yet I still think that the majority of broadcasters come along and their guiding voice, at least initially, is like a 66-year-old white guy.
Yeah.
And everyone starts soft speaking that way and sounding that way, even when you're 22. And hopefully, eventually, everybody gets out of that. I'm an advocate for just speak the way you speak. Um, do you? I know that that's simplified, but stay away from sort of the broadcastery type stuff. And I think you want to have fun. I think, I'm trying to provide, I'm a big stat head, and, I'm not going to sit there and turn it into math class. I'm not going to
Mhm.
try and break down the formula for WOBA, but I also will tell you, um, that in 2009, what the first pitch fastball percentage was in Major League Baseball compared to last year and how much it's changed. And that's the same stuff. So I think when you're doing that and then you're trying to play a little bit and not taking yourself too seriously, I think that I probably play younger than I am.
Oh, I think so. Absolutely.
And so I don't know I don't want to speak for the way it'll go. I trust the way that I do it. I think I'm decent at connecting to the younger folks, and yeah, just I kind of trust my judgment on it. So I don't know I hope it'll be more access. We did that all access game with Brian and Rizzo, and they were
That
incredible.
was fun. Yeah.
Did it, and then you know I, I was in spots when I had to just kind of poke them a little bit, and then I got good stuff out of them, and then they would
Right.
go uh, and I love that. I love it. So I mean, that game, man, I was smiling. That's a good example of a rarity where I'm doing that game thinking to myself, well, this is great. You know what I mean? It's not like, you do a broadcast and then you finish and then it's like, okay, that was pretty good. But that one was one of those where, like, as you're in it and listening to the two of them talk and the stuff that they're saying and you're in it going, yeah, this is good. Like, you just knew it, and then
Yeah.
even after the fact, having Cubs players and other players tell me that they were supposed to go home and they stayed in the clubhouse to watch. It was so entertaining.
Yeah. Does
So
that mean more to you when the players say they like the broadcast than just the average fans?
I don't think so. I I would say this. Um, I think what means the most is when you have uh, you have a sensibility and someone. I think we all have an idea about what we think we're good at, and if someone gives you the compliment that kind of matches up with that, that probably is the thing that means the most, regardless of who it's from. So, like someone saying, "I like your voice," whereas like it was I don't Rob Nyer or Bill James were watching me do a Kansas game one time. I can't. They're both from Kansas City, and I can't. But one of them was like, the thing I like about Boog is he doesn't say dumb shit,
Yeah.
and like that's the bar for me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like think about it. If I put you on the air for 3 straight hours, if the bar is just don't say dumb shit for the people that don't do, it's not so easy to pull off.
Right. It's
If
not.
you,
We've only been
because
on for 54 minutes, and I've been
because you
struggling
but
right
your
now.
content you have a choice here and a choice here and a
Yeah.
choice here. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like we
Right.
both have it. Like that at some point, and in a live broadcast, there's a chance you're going to say dumb shit. So like getting that compliment is like, oh man, that's really nice of you to say. I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
say anything really stupid.
Do you aim your broadcasts at anyone in particular? Do you act like you're talking to an individual, or do you just talk to the listener base as a whole?
Uh, I'm not.
Well, if you're up there with chippers, say, I know you guys haven't done, a ton yet, but are you guys talking to each other, or are you more cognizant of talking to the audience?
I think it starts with we're talking to each other,
Yeah.
but I'm conscious of. I would say this. It's you're talking. And start on TV. I think of it. It's we have a very active truck. Jeff Dufine's been my
Mhm.
producer. He's magnificent. He's moving on. He's now the Sunday Night Baseball producer. Jimmy Platt was our director. He's now the Monday Night Football director. And one of the things that they would do is they would key their mic and leave it open, so that at times, if I were to take a shot at Sut or Rossi and really get them good,
Yeah.
they just open their mic so I could hear the whole truck laughing.
Sure.
So to some extent, and then, if somebody says, if when Rossi says, ooh, that I feel bad for Dan, and I would just kind of look in the camera like,
Yeah.
so I guess I'm probably playing to the truck and to the people here, but I'm cognizant that there are people watching for sure.
You ever said anything that you felt like kind of crossed the line, maybe to one of your partners or something like that, and regretted it? I can give you a story if you need to be loosened up. I was in the Frontier League, independent baseball, 2014. Now, this wasn't really an insult, but there was a little chopper down the third base line, and it was a close play at first base, and they got our runner, the Washington Wild Things versus the River City Rascals, and I was with the Rascals, and they got our runner, Brian McConkey, and I wanted to say uh, it was close, and he almost beat it out. It almost pulled him off the bag, and instead I said, "Boy, that was close. He just beat him off the bag." And I just thought it'd
Right.
be And I remember saying afterward, hey, oh, hold on, hold on there a second. You
Yeah.
ever have a moment like that that was kind of like a slip?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's
Well, there's
yeah,
so many here, Boog, huh?
there's enough of them out there. There's enough of them out there that with the internet, I'm not going to direct anyone. But yeah,
Yeah.
and then editorially every once in a while. I mean, I don't think anything egregious, but absolutely, you
Yeah.
have. I'm trying to think if there was a good. I mean, look, if I think that part of what I do, I can remember doing a game with Aaron Boone and Mark Mulder, and there was some pitcher hitting for the first time, and he stood in, and just the way he was standing there, and I said, well, he certainly looks like he can hit. And there was just like a pause. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why I said that. That was really stupid.
Yeah.
And that was the sequence of the commentary, you know? But
Sure.
and so I mean, I'm as ready to bury myself when I do dumb stuff. So
Would you ever want to do a game just by yourself? No analyst, no color commentator?
nah, I mean, I I'm amazed at what Vin was able to do. The only other
Yeah.
person I think that's in that family that really could pull that off would be John Miller.
Yeah.
He's the guy. But I think America gets enough of me. I
Yeah.
think I don't. I need somebody else. I'm tired of me.
Dream partner. Well, how about this? I know you're a big basketball fan. You're a big
Yeah,
NBA fan. How about you and Doris Burke together? What would that be?
I love Doris Burke.
Yeah.
Doris, we worked one or two games together. Um, I'm such a big fan of
I want to see
hers.
crossover with her in the baseball booth. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
and it's such a nice thing where like I'll be doing Sunday night baseball and Doris will send me a text or something or a Wednesday
Yeah.
night game and she'll send me and I'm watching her and I mean whether it's as an analyst or as a reporter, she's so good.
Yeah, she's
She's just
amazing.
so good.
Doris
Uh,
Burke is my celebrity crush, and I
is
hope
that
she's
right?
listening. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to cut this clip later here, John. So hopefully she's.
Okay, so it's funny because I I really was before she moved on to the NBA.
Right.
I thought she and I would get a chance to maybe do some more college together. But
Yeah.
yeah, she's amazing. And I mean, as far as dream partner, last few years, the people I've gotten, working with Rick Sutcliffe has been a lot of fun. And Rick Sutcliffe and David Ross. And honestly, I'm excited about getting a chance to work with Chipper. I think Chipper and I are gonna do a really good job, and we'll be with Sut a lot of the time, so it's gonna be good.
Greatest interview guest you've ever had? On air, live on air, not something maybe pre-recorded, but who was the best? He came up to the booth and just knocked it out of the park. Or she.
Um, I mean, we had Rob Manfred on during opening day a couple years ago, and I knew we were going to have him on, and it was the first year of the Mount Visit thing, and I joked with Brian McCann before the game to like, okay, the commissioner is going to be on in the third, go out to the mound and take like a long time and maybe look up to the booth. And then we were laughing about it. And then I actually told the commissioner that I had thought about planning to do that. And he
Mhm.
belly laughed hard. And that kind
Yeah.
of delighted me. The first thing that comes to mind, I don't know why I'm blanking. The first thing that comes to mind as far as an in game interview would be Sandy Koufax.
Oh, wow.
There's just something about, I'm not a Dodger fan. He doesn't do a ton of interviews, and he came and sat with us during Jackie Robinson Day.
Yeah.
And that's an example. And this is inside the last 4 years, 5
Mhm.
years. And I was nervous. He's can you be kind of regal? He feels
Well,
like,
Prince Harry has been testing the limits of that theory right there. So
well,
that's
I mean,
it's
whatever.
possible.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I was pretty blown away by Sandy Koufax. That's for
That's well, that's a heck of a guest, and you've been a heck of a guest, John. I know you've got maybe a few other things to do. You're doing something for the Hall of Fame tonight, right? With Chipper Jones. Maybe you could tell us a little
Christopher
bit about that.
Jones. I think we're going to do that weekly. We're going to do that on the Instagram live thing, 7:30 Eastern. So I don't know. Check out the Baseball Hall of Fame Instagram page, and
And what'll be the topic? Just baseball in general? Are you talking about the Hall of Fame? What are you guys talking about?
whatever we run into.
Yeah. Well, when you're at your level, you can pretty much just decide, right?
Well, I don't. I mean, I don't. It's like every week he tells good stories, and we just go down, and so it sort of just weaves in and out in terms of what's happening in the game today. What about that time? What team do you wish you would have played for if it wasn't the Braves? Who would have been
Who are
hardest?
that? I got to ask if you can give a spoiler. Who would that have been if he had not been with the Braves?
He said, well, he grew up a Dodger fan.
Ah,
His favorite player was Pedro Guerrero. So the two
ah,
were, it was funny because I knew that the other one was likely going to be the Yankees because his dad was a big Mickey Mantle fan. So he said
sure.
the Dodger, he said, well, it'd be two. And he'd say, he said Dodgers, Pedro Guerrero, and then the other team. And he gets kind of the Cheshire Cat look. And I'm like, come on, say it. I'm like, I know, come on, say it. And he's like, the Yankees. And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
right. I was not. I was a Phillies fan as a kid, but yeah. So and then we asked him who Smoltz, Maddox, Glavine, who would you prefer to face? And he said
Yeah.
Smoltz. So
Hey,
I think he also said it just to piss John off. But
former St. Louis Cardinal great John Smoltz, right?
I saw somebody. John and I have become friendly. We were together in Atlanta for 2 years, but I've seen a John Smoltz Cardinal jersey T-shirt and a Red Sox John
Sure.
Smoltz
Ooh,
jersey,
even rarer.
and I take pictures and I'm like, and I'll send it to him and be like, what were these people thinking?
I was in Pensacola, Florida, University of West Florida, and we were doing the NCAA soccer tournament. So it was West Florida versus Lee University in the round of 32. And his daughter, Carly Smoltz,
Okay,
was actually playing on the Lee University team.
all
And
right,
it was during the World Series that time of year. And so I had just been watching the World Series the night before, and we went into overtime, and Carly, I don't think got into the game, but she came out as one of the captains to do the coin flip before overtime.
right.
And so I said, such and such for University of West Florida. And look at this. It's Carly Smoltz for Lee University. I believe she's the daughter of former St. Louis Cardinal great John Smoltz. And of course, it being Pensacola, mostly Braves fans. I
People
got a
lose their
lot
mind.
of, I got a lot of dirty looks. And I
Oh,
just, I
come
just
on,
laughed.
it's like it's a joke. Yeah, that's good
Well,
line. Good line.
I thought it was a great line.
Good line.
The coin flip was not the most exciting part of that game, so I thought I did a good job to kind of liven the moment a little
That's
bit. And yeah, it was. But I said, hey, look at that. I was watching John last night, listening to him, and now he's out there in internet radio and television land listening to me. Hey,
That's
John, how you doing? And it was
awesome.
funny. But hey, if you ever see him, ask if he was watching me there. No, I'm kidding. But
I will.
John. Oh, go ahead. I'm
No, I
I'm
will.
sorry.
I'm gonna ask him that now.
Joey Zanaboni. Well, you've been a great guest, John, and you've been just terrific to listen to through the years. Definitely an inspiration myself. And this being the first episode ever of the LCRR podcast, I could not think of anybody out there, anybody ever, that would have been a better guest than you. So thank you so much for being with us.
Bad judgment by you that nobody.
No,
No, I'm joking. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
this was awesome, John. Well, I will talk to you again soon, and stay safe during this crisis, and be well, my friend.
All right. Good luck. Thank you.